Hi everyone and welcome to Marvelous Designer 2, my go-to Marvelous Designer. Now, sometimes when you open up Marvelous Designer, you may notice that you don't have, it looks like this, and you're missing a few icons. If your bar looks like this, then you are missing a few icons, is what I want to say. You need to enable this if you want to create. So take your cursor and place it on this gray bar right here and right click and then select 2D pattern toolbar, and it will give you all the rest of the tools that we're going to be using here in Marvelous Designer. Now, if you watched any of my previous Marvelous Designer tutorials, it is exactly the same process. You can actually skip this if you want, and then we'll meet back up in rigging. Although, if you saw any of my rigging tutorials, it again is exactly the same thing, so you already know what to do. But, to those who are new, welcome, and I'll show you everything that I show those guys. That way in the future tutorials you can skip this part too. Okay, so first thing we need to do is bring in our cat. And I'm going to bring her in by selecting File, Open, Avatar, and we're going to navigate to our project folder. And I'm going to select Bladencat Fashion, which is what I saved it. And then it's going to ask us what scale do we want to put in here. All you have to do is select this little M at the bottom and then hit OK. And as you see, we have our cat pop right in. And we're going to get rid of our default dress so we can create new stuff. And we're going to start preparing to make clothes. So I'm just going to tell you something real quick so that way when I'm slinging around some lingo you can understand what I'm saying. This window right here with the model in it is called our 3D window. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Ooh. This is our 3D window, and this is our 2D pattern window. We're going to create our patterns in here and then sew them on our 3D window over here onto our model. So when I say go to your 3D window, I'm like over here. Go to the 2D window over here. Or if I slip and say pattern window, I'm talking about this one. Now you see you've got our silhouette of our cat and a model of here. That means everything is well, and we can start making clothes. To make clothes, you need to understand the basic pattern making tools. These are the pattern making tools up here on the top of your 2D pattern window. The one you're going to use the most is called the polygon tool, and that allows you to create any shape you want as long as you go back to the first dot. Now I bet you're wondering why hasn't it shown up. Well, if you create a pattern of any kind and it's not showing up on your 3D window, that's because you have their sync turned off. You need to turn on your sync, and then all your shapes will show up on the 3D window. So delete them too on that side if you want. Now that we have our sync turned on, we can go back to creating patterns. So we have our polygon tool, which goes by dots, and you can create any shape you want as long as you go back to the first dot. Then next to that, we have our rectangle tool or our square tool or our box pattern tool, which lets you easily create it by squares or rectangles by clicking and dragging until you make the shape that you want, which is a whole lot easier than trying to create one by hand and with the polygon tool, and a hell of a lot faster. So I'm just going to get rid of those. Next to that is our circle pattern tool, which lets you create circles. Now, circles are great for skirts or other internal patterns or cutting holes and things, but that's a whole nother tool, so forget I mentioned the cutting part. So yeah, click and drag and create easy circles rather than trying to do the humanly impossible by making a circle with the polygon tool. So these are all those. Next to them we have our internal shape tools, our internal pattern tools. Now these look exactly like our regular sewing tools except for they are red. Red means internal in Marvelous Designer. So as you see, you can, and they work pretty much the same as the non-internal tools, except you can create any shape you want and you don't have to go back to the first dot. See, I can double click it and there's the internal shape, whereas if I try to do that with the polygon tool, it's like no bueno. You need to go back to that first dot, like so. Now, internal tools, pattern tools are great for a number of things. They allow you to cut out those holes that I mentioned earlier into your pattern, like so. And it also allows you to use them to create more seam lines inside there, so you can attach fabric to fabric, or it can be what do you call it? What's the stretchy thing? Elastic, or it can mark folds. You know, the internal tools are all there for you to play with, and I suggest taking some time off and playing around with them to learn their fullest. Next to it, our internal polygon tool is our internal rectangle tool, which, as you guessed it, lets you make internal rectangles with ease without having to try to do it with the polygon tool. And the same thing goes for our internal circle tool. So you can create internal circles inside your patterns. Next to that is our dart tool, and no matter how many times people tell me what darts do, I still don't understand it. I guess it creates a tighter fit or better, because you get to sew these two together, and it helps it contour better to the body, because, you know, real pattern making and not this half butt stuff that I do. But I actually just use it to rip quick holes inside of my pattern, and which is great for you know, little designs like this, or for, you know, working with furry avatars when you have to cut a hole in their pants or something for tails. So I like to do that real quick, and I use the darts for that. But, you know, use darts how they're supposed to be used. I guess it's a quick Google search. Alright, so now we know how to create our patterns. It's time to learn how to manipulate our patterns. I'm going to create a quick rectangle. I gotta make it long for rectangle. There you go. That was a square. And we're going to use our manipulation tools. Over here is our tool. The one you're going to use the most is our edit pattern tool, which is pretty self-explanatory. It allows you to select dots and parts of your pattern and edit it around to change its shape. Next to it is our transform, which allows you to transform it, you know, make it bigger, make it longer, rotate it, and you can manipulate multiple things at once by using that transform tool. So if you select it and you squeeze it down, you can rotate, you know, do stuff like that, or rotate and have a good old time with that using the black arrow. Next to that is our curves, which allows you to add curves to your pattern. So that's great for when you're working on sleeves, or you have to a square you're trying to turn into a skirt and you want to flare it out a bit. So, you know, basically make your pattern all nice and curvy. It looks like a bow and arrow, so that's really the only way I can remember what that tool does. Next to that is our edit curves. So you have a curve and you need to make it even curvier. You can use this tool to click on it and add more dots to it and manipulate how curvy your pattern goes, like this. Okay, so that's cool. Now this one is one that I love to use, and you're going to be using it too, and that's to add a point. And this allows you to add more edit dots to your pattern, so you can, well, edit your pattern a little more, so easily. See? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And those are the tools of Marvelous Designer. Now we get to go to the fun part, and that's over here, our 3D tools, which hang on, shoot, sorry, cat was fighting my ankle. Alright, so the fun tools, where we get to learn about segment sewing and sewing in our patterns together to create garments. However, that is a whole nother video altogether when we actually start making things. So I feel like the best way for me to show you how that works is to actually show you how to make clothes. So I'm going to end it right here, and you can play around and make a couple test patterns if you want to, get them familiar with everything, and then we can come back to it. But for right now, we're going to stop, and then we're going to go over to our next video where I show you how to make the classic Mighty Ginkgo t-shirt, and then we can talk about other t-shirts and avatar properties and all the rest of that fun jazz, you know, clothes making. Okay, so see you in the next video.